In July 2008, the world was shocked by one of the most controversial and highly debated cases in US history. An innocent, happy and loving child vanishes and her mother has no answers as to where she is. And as the police take a deeper look into the lives of those involved, this case becomes more and more disturbing. A web of lies and a host of questions, with the most important being what happened to Caylee Anthony. This is a story with twists, turns, betrayal and injustice. This is the case of Caylee Anthony. So this case starts with a sequence of events that take place in Florida on July the 15th, 2008, when a woman named Zanny Anthony makes a phone call to police services. And she tells the call handler that her vehicle has been stolen by her 22-year-old daughter, Caylee. Half an hour later, Zanny calls back police again, but this time to tell them something different, and that is to report her granddaughter missing.
I have someone here that I need to be arrested in my home. They're there right now. A possible missing child.
Zanny tells the police that no one has seen from or heard from her granddaughter in 31 days, and that is Caylee Anthony, the daughter of Zanny's daughter, Caylee Anthony. And finally, a third police phone call is made. This time when Zanny Anthony tells the police that she believes that her granddaughter has been kidnapped by her babysitter.
911, what's your emergency? I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. Her mother finally admitted that she's been missing. Okay, is your daughter there? Yes. Can I speak with her? She's downstairs. They want to talk to you. Answer the question. Hello? Hello? Can you tell me a little bit what's going on? My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days. I know who has her. I've tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute. And you last saw her a month ago? 31 days. Why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago? I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her, which was stupid.
Right, I'm just going to come out and say it. I know that after the event, we can always microanalyze things and say, hold on, that seemed a bit weird, but it doesn't take a fucking genius to work out. That, to me, is not a usual 911 call. Josh, did you think that there was anything untoward there? Did you think that anything stood out at you in that phone call, or am I looking too far in to this call?
You never look too far into true crime cases, do you?
No, I never would. No.
That's very surprising. No, look, the context is this is the third phone call that we've actually had from Zanny, so bear that in mind. And yeah, she's worked up. She's definitely, the levels of how much worked up she's been has exacerbated call to call. But then you hear Caylee on the other end, and you're like, wait a second, this woman doesn't even want to speak to the police.
By the way, she actually says that.
Yeah.
Like there's people that have debated this because obviously it's muffled and it's hard. Some people say it's inaudible and you can't hear it. Well, I very clearly hear Zanny say they want to talk to her, right? And I'm interpreting that maybe she is saying that to Caylee's father as well as that. And then you can hear what to me sounds like a voice that is further away from the phone saying, I don't want to talk to them. Why would you not want to talk to them? By the way, to give it context, that voice is Caylee Anthony that says, in my opinion, I don't want to talk to them. Why would you not want to talk to the police about your missing daughter, Josh?
Who, by the way, has been missing for 31 days. So this isn't like, I'm sure she's just with a friend. I'm sure she's out with her mates. This is absolutely fine. This is completely normal. She's with a babysitter. She's with someone I know. No. She's been gone for a really long time and she doesn't know where she's been for a very long time. So yeah, mate, This is where it starts to get weird.
And also, the other thing that I noticed massively is, despite the fact that you could say, look, different people grieve in different ways, different people stress in different ways, and different people show emotion in different ways. The difference between the tone that Caylee Anthony's mother Cindy is displaying and the almost disinterested tone that Casey is coming across with is really night and day, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And also, doesn't the person on the end of the call, the one that works for the police, aren't they actually like, why haven't you reported this? Like,
Mate,
why has it been a month?
That says it all. When the dispatcher is saying to you, why have you only just reported this now? Do you know what I mean? Like, this isn't a detective. This isn't an investigator. This isn't someone that's relevant. And red flags and alarm bells are even starting to signal to the dispatcher at this point.
I mean,
in
it's
time.
not rocket science, is it? You know, you've got a mother that could be missing her little child, and it's been 31 days. It just there's just something about that just immediately doesn't add up.
And not only that, mate. At the end of it, if we're dealing with a missing child, what was the whole stolen car stuff about?
Yeah, what
because
was that
we never
about?
got to the bottom of why they reported her car stolen. Very clearly, something's going on within this household that we need to find out a lot more details about to even understand. And in an attempt to do that, I think, Josh, this is the time when you should tell me a bit more about Caylee Anthony herself.
Let's go into it. So, Caylee Marie Anthony was born on March the 19th, 1986 in Warren, Ohio. She was the second of two children born to George and Cindy Anthony, who'd got married in March 1981 in Ohio as well, and then actually met in a hospital where Cindy worked. She actually had an older brother called Lee Anthony, and he was born in November 1982. When Caylee was just 3 years old, the family moved from Ohio to Florida. This is where George Anthony worked in law enforcement. He was actually a deputy for the Trumbull County Sheriff Department in Ohio and then transferred to Florida. And Cindy Anthony worked as a registered nurse. Caylee was often described as a bright and personable young girl who enjoyed many friendships at school. She was very well liked, and her family appeared to be a very ordinary American family. So obviously what we do in these cases, we look at their school history because it's quite insightful and interesting sometimes to know how these kids and these people grew up.
Yep.
So you know that she went to high school.
Yep.
Did you know how well she did in high school?
I know that she was regarded as quite a bright pupil.
She actually didn't graduate high school, and she didn't actually pass, effectively. She didn't get enough grades to graduate out of high school. You know what it happens in America? Basically, you get the graduation ceremony, you know, it shows that you've passed high school and gone into it. We only do that for university, for any American viewers watching. We only have graduation ceremonies
I
in
only
university.
had graduation after I graduated from uni.
Yeah. Where did you get your gown from?
I can't remember.
So Casey, obviously, she would tell her parents that she didn't graduate high school, because what usually happens is the parents do a graduation party and they spend a lot of time to make sure, you know, friends and family are there. It's a big moment in a lot of kids' time. So obviously Casey told them that, didn't she?
What, that she had graduated or she hadn't?
She'd flunked. She said to them, "Oh yeah, I flunked out of high school."
And what did they say?
No. She lied. She said to her family, yeah, I've graduated. You know, it's fine. They threw a graduation party. They celebrated the graduation. And then she said to them afterwards, she said, "Oh yeah, there was an administrative error and I actually didn't pass high school." And
fucking administrative errors. I hate them, man.
Bullshit. Yeah. So Casey then went on to work
I really should have used that one.
You should have.
I should have used
it's a
that
classic.
one.
It's a classic. She went on to work in Universal Studios. Now, when people think that, you think also that's quite a cool job. But she didn't actually work for Universal Studios. She actually worked in a photo kiosk.
Right.
In Universal Studios. But she was one of those people, God, do you remember this in the Amy Bradley case? The guy that worked in the photo kiosk. She was one of those people. Right. She was taking the photos. If you haven't seen the Amy Bradley case, there'll be a link on screen right now. That's definitely one worth watching if you want to watch this case. So she was there, she was 18, she got her first job, she was starting off, she was earning fuck all money, but that's the way it works when you're 18. You're starting off your career, right? Soon after that, she gets pregnant. She gets pregnant about 19 years old. Again, this is quite an important part in your life. You'd expect to tell your family and your friends, "I'm pregnant, you know, I need your support, I need your guidance."
Well, you'd expect that your family and friends might have an indication anyway, because I hate to break it to you, Josh, But it does actually take two to tango. Normally it needs to be another person to get pregnant. So
What?
you'd expect that maybe her family might know she's in a relationship.
No,
or...
they didn't know she was in a relationship. They didn't know that she'd got pregnant. So much so that she actually kept the pregnancy hidden for a very, very long time. She actually went to a family barbecue, and her uncle said, "Congratulations, on the pregnancy." She was 7 months pregnant. She had been showing for quite a long time.
She kept it secret from her mum and dad for 7 months.
The parents knew something was up, but they said at this family party, after Casey had denied for the last 7 months, she said, "Oh no, she's just bloated. She's not pregnant."
So they denied her being pregnant.
They denied it as well.
See, this is weird because this leads into the case when we really start breaking it down and I suppose playing the blame game. There is a history of not only lying from Casey, that would then tell me that there is a history of at least coercive lying from their family.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I suppose if you hear a lie enough times, you might potentially believe it. But it's soon after this family barbecue that she does come clean and she says, I am pregnant. She doesn't disclose who the father is. And in fact, unless you tell me otherwise, I still don't know who the father is.
I've got no idea who the father is.
So there you go. It's never disclosed. So on the 9th of August, 2005, Caylee Marie Anthony, a little girl, was born to Casey, and they lived in the family home all together. Casey, Caylee, and the two parents, because Casey was still a young woman at this time. She's, I think, only just 20 at this point.
Yep.
So they're all living in the family home, and they... the grandparents are doting grandparents. They again, I'm interested to see what you think, but I think they treated this young granddaughter as if it was another daughter in a weird way. Do you know what I mean? Like, they loved that daughter.
Yeah,
and
so
they loved the granddaughter.
I personally have experienced living with a grandchild that has been born into the same home as the grandparents. Yeah. Like, I've had it, and I've had it with my sister's kids and stuff like that. And yeah, I think that you can't deny that there is more of a parental bond than a grandparent bond when you've been born into that same household. So I know with a few of my nephews and whatnot, where they've been born under the same roof as my mum and dad, they're closer with them maybe. And I think that is a thing that can happen. And I think that in this case specifically, George and Cindy, Caylee Anthony's parents, definitely saw Caylee as a lot more than just another grandchild. You know what I mean? They almost had like a new lease of life when Casey had Caylee, because it was like having another child from. Bearing in mind, they're living in America where, okay, yeah, legally you can have a child, but legally she wouldn't be able to raise a toast, to celebrate an alcoholic drink after having that child.
No, in America,
age.
I think, again, a 20-year-old still feels very much like a kid. Whereas in the UK, when you're 16, 18, you've got to get on with your life pretty quickly, haven't you, at that point? But it was said that they were actually looking after, so George and Cindy were actually looking after Caylee about 90% of the time. So it seemed like they were very much raising little Caylee, and Casey was just there to sort of figure it out as she went along.
Yeah, and that sounds about right. And I think that from everything that I've been able to digest in terms of Caylee's life, she was with her grandparents a lot of the time. And Casey herself was often off and enjoying her personal life.
She was, as any young person would probably want to do at this point. So we get to a new, and I suppose next point in the story. This is in June the 16th, 2008, wasn't it? Casey basically, did she just leave the house? She basically said to her parents, "I'm going away."
Well, she told her parents that she was heading to Tampa on a work trip. The problem is there was no work, was there?
No.
Now, you mentioned that she worked at Universal Studios. Well, if she did work at Universal Studios, I find it very, very unusual that they would be sending their kiosk workers on work conferences to Tampa. Yeah? But let's say they did, right? And let's take what Casey has told her parents on this day at face value. She actually says that she is going to be dropping Caylee to the babysitters. And this was a babysitter that Caylee had apparently been going to when her mum Casey would go to work. The babysitter was a woman that Casey referred to by the name Zanny. And then as the days turn into weeks, both George and Cindy Anthony realised that despite being in some form of contact with Casey, and despite speaking fairly regularly with their daughter, they hadn't actually directly spoke to Caylee in the almost like three and a half weeks that Casey had been away at this point. And whenever they had asked to speak to Caylee, there had always been a reason why they couldn't. For example, she was with the babysitter, she was at the beach, she was at the park. There was always a reason of why they couldn't speak to Caylee. And it got to the point where it had been a month since they had seen Casey or Caylee, and in that time there was only Casey that had been actually in contact speaking with them. And it's at this point when George Anthony receives a phone call.
Right, before we get into that, do you want a chance to win €50,000, Joe? It's like £44,000.
Is that a serious question? Yes, I'd love a chance.
Well, Holy, the wonderful channel sponsors of the Joey and Josh podcast, are giving you that chance. And you can also win one of three €10,000 prizes as well. Now, you've got a limited time. You can only do this until the 2nd of December. How do you take part? Well, all you have to do is place an order on the Holy website. If you are inside the UK or Europe, you will be automatically entered into this competition. Now, what are Holy, you might be asking? Well, these little sachets in this box right here are your alternative to conventional energy drinks and soft drinks. And the best place to try these wonderful bundles of joy is with the Starter Kit Deluxe. Why? Well, inside that starter kit, you will get these mini sachets, and you get 7 flavors of Holy Energy, 7 flavors of Holy Hydration, 7 flavors of Holy Iced Tea, and you guessed it, 7 flavors of Holy Milkshake. My go-to is the iced tea, and what I do is I just get one of these sachets, you put it in 500 milliliters of cold water, and you get a tasty beverage without all of those bubbles and without all of that bloating. And for me, my flavor of choice is the acai and hibiscus flavor. This tastes to me just like a little blackcurrant drink. I love the flavor of it. And it's made with real tea. There is no sugar in here. It's high in vitamin C, and you get things like fiber and antioxidants included with it. But Joey, you actually go for the Holy Energy, don't you?
Yeah, sorry to ruin your party, mate, but I'm about to top it because I go for the apple alligator, and it is unreal. No sugar, no aspartame, just 21 calories. And I've got to be honest, mate, I love the flavour. It reminds me of the sort of sweets that I used to eat at school, but without all of the shit inside of it. And it also has Nucaf and L-theanine inside, which you might be wondering what that is. Well, that gives you smooth and steady energy, basically, without getting all the jitters.
And if you try it for yourself, you will be in good company with Holy Energy, because they have a 4.6 average rating on Trustpilot, and that is with over 108,000 reviews. And if you use the link in our description, you will get £10 off the Starter Set Deluxe. And there's also a discount code, JoeyJosh5. If you use that, you'll get another £5 off that starter kit. And this only ever happens once a year, so this is your time. If you've been thinking about trying Holy, then give it a go today.
And the phone call is someone telling him that his car has been towed and was ready to be picked up from an impound. This was the car that George had given to his daughter Casey to go to work in that day. And when George went to the car pound, he gets there and one of the workers actually informs him that there's a foul stench coming from the car. Now, George himself, being a former homicide detective, knew instantly that he recognized that smell as being like human decomposition.
So wait a second, was there actually a body in the back of the car then?
No. So that sort of decomposition smell that I speak of was actually believed to have come from a bag of rubbish that was in the boot of the car. Garbage, as our American viewers would know it. And it was assumed that maybe there could be like some rotten food or something like that in that bag. But what else was found in the car were possessions of Casey's and of Caylee's. Caylee's baby seat, her car seat, was still in the car. As well as that, there was a bag of possessions belonging to Casey that were found inside of the vehicle. And at this point, you can imagine that George and Cindy are absolutely shitting themselves. They found the car, but they don't know where Casey is. They don't know where Caylee is. They just know that their possessions were left in that car. So frantically, they are calling round everyone that they have ever known Casey to even have any contact with, but they're not really getting anywhere until eventually they finally get hold of a friend of Casey's, and that friend says that Casey will be at her boyfriend's house in Tampa. So Cindy and George then take the 2-hour trip to Tampa, where they collect their daughter from her boyfriend's house. And when Casey comes out of the house, it's quite clear to see that she's not all there at this moment in time. She's intoxicated, she seems confused, but one thing is that she does not have Caylee with her. And it's at this point that she turns to her parents and tells them that she hasn't seen Caylee since the day that she left home.
And that confirms that Casey had been lying the entire time. So every time she was saying that she was at swimming, she was at the beach, she was with a babysitter, this young Caylee, she wasn't.
No.
She was
and there's also
lying.
like a lot of detail that Casey went into. And this is the thing with, you know, compulsive liars. What you'll find is they'll usually zone in on very specific details. They'll go into a lot of detail when they tell you events that ultimately you wouldn't really remember all that well because they weren't significant events. And this was something that was there. But do you remember I said about the babysitter, Zanny?
Yes.
Well, there was a woman named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And she was a babysitter.
Where was she? Was she in the local area? Was she like very close to her, or how far away was it?
Well, she actually lived 20 miles away and had never heard of Casey or Caylee. So I'm assuming that Casey maybe just looked into babysitting services and used this woman's identity.
But there's surely some element of researching and trying to figure this out, because otherwise, like, why would you just randomly come across her? Why would you randomly go through the yellow pages, find a babysitter, figure out a name? It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Yeah, it is weird. And it's at this point that Cindy does make that phone call that we initially heard to the police. And interestingly enough, right, Casey actually says on the phone to the police that although she hasn't seen her daughter Caylee since that day she dropped her to the babysitters, she did briefly speak to her on the phone, which to an extent confirms that Caylee is still alive.
So after those telephone calls that you heard at the start of this episode, police are incredibly concerned about the fate and the well-being of this missing young girl. So what they do is they immediately get various family members actually in for questioning, and they sort of at this stage ask them about whether they're witnesses to a potential crime. They need to get as much information as possible. Obviously, with all of these cases, what you'd expect to do is that the immediate family are very happy to help and would be effusive in the information that they give. They're desperate to give the police some information to find their missing family member. That's what you'd expect.
Yeah, of course. Desperate. Just give me 31 days and I will be on it straight away.
So weird. So Casey then gets in and she starts talking quite a lot. She's obviously got a very clear idea of what's happened because she knows this nanny. She knows her for quite a long time. Not only does she know her for quite a long time, she actually knows her entire family history. She knew where she grew up, what school she went to, what her family dynamic was like, the fact that her dad left when she was quite a young kid and that she'd had a stepfather. She knew quite a lot of information about this. So much so that she gave a level of detail that, quite frankly, Joey, I don't think I'd know about you.
No. Can I use the word that I would summarise the level of detail she gave?
Go on.
Pointless.
Pointless
details.
She's
pointless details. You want to tell a liar?
Yeah.
Want to tell a liar? Spot some pointless details. That's how you'll find them.
So she heard, basically, she said to police the connection was that this guy, was his name Jeff Hopkins?
Yes, Jeff Hopkins was the man that worked at Universal Studios. with her.
Yeah, so and obviously got on really well, very good co-workers, know each other because they were
Everyone got
time.
on well with Jeff.
He was a good guy. And basically he was the one that connected her with this nanny.
Zanny the Nanny.
Zanny the Nanny, which later became coined and effectively might have been a very good brand name if it wasn't associated with such a horrendous case. And Jeff actually took his kids to Zanny the Nanny, and that they were all there together. So Caylee was there with Jeff's kids, and they all sort of spent the day there together.
Jeff from
Universal Studios.
Okay.
They all spent their time there while the two of them were at work.
Right.
Does that make sense?
They're at work, but they're at Zanny's, and they're working in Universal Studio, but for Universal Studio. It's kind of just continue. It's kind of making sense. It's kind of making sense.
But then apparently Jeff moves away, so Casey starts taking Caylee to Nanny Zanny by herself. And she's there now completely alone.
That's gutting that Jeff's moved away, by the way, because he could be key to the case.
He could be.
Obviously, he's moved away.
It's an awful coincidence. It's a terrible coincidence.
Shitter.
On June the 9th, 2008, Casey then says that she drives back from work to Zanny's, where she's expecting to pick up Caylee. But Zanny doesn't open the door, and both her and Caylee are nowhere to be found. So the immediate thing you would do is you'd call up Zanny and give her a bell and say, what's going on? Where is the kid? Where are you? What's going on? My daughter's with you. I'm terrified. Apparently Casey did that. She said to police that she did that, but she said that she got no answer. She said that the phone number had actually disconnected. So effectively the phone number was now pointless.
Right. Well, you know exactly what you do immediately after that then, don't you? What would you immediately do
immediately after that, you're in panic, you're stressed. The immediate thing you would do is call the police, tell your daughter is missing. So that's obviously what she did.
Yeah, 4 simple buttons. 911 call.
Cool.
Do that straight away. Is that what she did?
No, she didn't do that. She went to see her boyfriend, which again, maybe emotional support, Joey. Come on, go with me on this. Emotional support, the boyfriend's there, maybe he'll call the police, maybe he'll help. But they didn't do that actually. No. They what happened from this point on is what Joey and I can really sort of say is 30 days of partying, of raving, of enjoying themselves, of living life. Bella Vita, some people may say. Have you heard about Bella Vita?
Bella Vita is the tattoo that Caylee Anthony actually got.
In that period.
And I'll tell you what, right? It does look like she was having some fun. Like when we see them snaps, it looks like the final sequence from The Hangover or something. She was clearly,
it does. That's bad.
She was clearly living it up, weren't she?
She was having a great time. She was living the life in which I think she'd always wanted. A life in which she was free from having a kid, having a great time, living life in her 20s. Obviously, she'd now probably 21. She probably could drink, go out, celebrate.
By the way, this boyfriend of hers, you do realise at this time, we said that he didn't help her that night and report Caylee missing to the police. He doesn't know that Kaylee's missing during this time.
Would he not be asking some questions? Would he not be asking about little Caylee? He's met her.
Well, has he?
Well, has he?
I mean, we assume he has because she's been
question.
with Casey, but has he now? I don't know. All I'm saying is her boyfriend, the police, parents, no one's notified during this period of time that Caylee is missing. Now, is there any logical sense as to why you would not ring the police during this time?
This, for me, is one of the weirdest things I think I have ever seen. Because this woman... probably should say girl at this point, to be honest, because she's acting like a kid, isn't she? She doesn't call the police once in this period. And does she just think all of this stuff is going to go away? Does she care about her kids in any way? Is she so neglectful that she is just completely forgetting about this entire thing? What does she think is going to happen?
And the opinion that you're showing right now, or the view on it that you're showing, is so shared by so many people that police officers, at the first chance, just openly say to Casey, have you hurt your daughter? They start doing something that we saw in the Chris Watts case, and we've seen in multiple cases where police cunningly, in my opinion, will start to give you almost scenarios that could have hypothetically happened and therefore lead you down the path to admitting to what you've done in an attempt to get the truth out of it for you. But Casey is staying watertight, isn't she?
She is. And what they did in the Chris Watts case, again, another video that we've done on the channel, if you want to watch it, it's a good one. They sort of gave him less and less awful scenarios, didn't they? They started off and they said, oh, could someone have taken the girls? Could someone have, could they have been involved? Are you trying to cover up? Are you trying to obscure the truth because you don't want to seem to be a really bad parent? Do you know what I mean? So they did that, and they did that in this case, but Casey isn't divulging from her story at all. She is sticking to her story. She says, no, I dropped her off with the nanny, and that is the last time I saw her.
And that is when police turned their attention to Zanny the Nanny. And do you know what? It isn't going to be hard, is it, to work out what happened when they did that. They realised that Zanny the Nanny was a real person. But as we say, Zanny the Nanny had never looked after Caylee in her whole entire life. And what has happened as a result of this being uncovered is that police have confirmed what they suspected, and that is that on some level, Caylee Anthony is a proven liar. So what better way to really put this into concrete evidence than by taking her to her work, Universal is heavily entwined in the story and in the case. So the police want to take her to Universal. They want to meet Jeff. They want to meet her work colleagues that may be able to give them some more information on Zanny, on Jeff himself. They actually start walking through Universal Studios with Casey. They tell Casey to take her to her office. To the place that she works, to her desk. And
Casey was leading the way pretty much, wasn't she? And she's doing it for a long time. Like, they were basically walking around the park for like 2 hours. Universal Studios, by the way, is a massive park.
2 hours.
It's a long time.
2 hours. It's like walking around Fort Park, something bigger than that.
Bigger than that, way
right?
bigger than Fort Park.
2 hours they're walking round, and after 2 hours, Caylee Anthony turns round to the police, fed up as if they're wasting her time, and just says, look, I ain't even worked here for 2 years.
Cuff her.
What?
Literally, at this point, arrest her. Because this is just, you're wasting their time. The police, right? Surely at this point, the police are fuming. Because they know, first of all, they know she's a liar anyway. But now they've had it proven right in front of their face that she's a complete liar.
I mean, if you're a police officer, you're thinking, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I've been trying to help this woman, and I've been suspecting to myself that she's putting up roadblocks, right? I've been suspecting that she's putting up roadblocks. But as I say, different people deal with guilt in different ways. Different people deal with grief in different ways. And therefore, whether or not I'm suspicious that she's trying to make things a little bit tricky for us, I'm not going to come out and accuse us of it. But then they realised that she's not playing ball at all. She's lying. She's lied to them. And as a result of this, they do handcuff Caylee Anthony.
They do.
They arrest her there and then at her workplace, don't they?
They literally do. And so much so, they're so fuming at this point. What would usually happen is you get arrested and they take you back to the police station. They don't. They stop in Universal Studios. They get a conference room. They put down a recorder, so they get the audio from it. We don't have cameras like you'd have in a normal interrogation room. But they get this recorder, and they basically say, we're going to conduct an interview right here, right now. They actually charge her with a few things, don't they? They basically charge her with giving false statements to law enforcement, for child neglect, and for obstruction of a criminal investigation. So they actually get in and they start talking to her. Obviously, they're absolutely fuming at this point. So in this interview, detectives pressed her on the extensive lies that she had told, emphasizing that they knew everything that she had said so far was false, including where Caylee was. The detectives at this point say what we are all thinking. He said that the situation looked very, very bad for Casey and asked, I want you to tell me how lying is going to help us get to find your daughter. So what was Casey's justification at this point? Well, she said that she was only lying because she was scared. She said that she was naive enough to think that I could handle this myself. She admitted that she was scared that something would happen to her if she did notify the authorities or got the media involved. So she's more worried at this point about the media coming around, some stories, some press attention, some cameras being in her face, than the welfare of her own daughter.
Yeah, I mean, I was recently in a situation, right, where I wanted to locate an individual. And the first thing that I thought of doing was what?
Go on.
Going to the media.
Yeah, that's the first thing you've always said. You've always said you'd go to the Sun first.
Yeah, there you go. No,
Crossbow killer.
But being deadly serious, right?
Yeah.
You would go to the media straight away first, because ultimately Caylee Anthony's daughter is not of an age where really she can come and say, look, this person's taken me, you know, this isn't my mother or something like that. But if her face is plastered all over US national news, someone's more than likely, in my opinion, if she's alive, to recognise her. And therefore, you would think that she would want the media to be involved straight away.
Yeah, she absolutely. And it was not only the media reaction that she was worried about. She was also, have you heard about this, worried about the reaction of her own mother. She said she was effectively, at this point, scared of her own mother. Now, key context here, the mother was the one that originally made the phone call. Not only did she make one phone call, she made 3 telephone calls. So she was obviously more worried about the welfare of Caylee than Casey was. Yep. At this point. That's obvious, isn't it? And it keeps getting worse for Casey because they know at this point that Jeff hadn't worked. You won't believe this. This guy, Jeff, didn't actually work at Universal Studios for 6 years.
So how did she even know that there was a man named Jeff? Like, this woman, was, for this time period as well, she was clued up.
She did her research.
Being able to find out former employees of certain organisations, being able to find nannies in different locations. I mean, that nanny was 20 miles away from the family home.
It's almost like she put a decent amount of time into sort of concocting a story, almost.
Yeah, it very much seems pre-calculated, because I'll tell you what, it's a hell of a coincidence to guess that there was a guy called Jeff that worked at Universal. Yeah. And to guess that there was a Zanny the Nanny.
And by the way, this whole time, she's still going on that the nanny story is true as well. She's not backing down from that. So for all of this, they've charged her now with 3 pretty serious crimes. She's going to jail. She's not getting out of jail at this point. And basically what they say to her is that we're now awaiting trial and she's going to be in custody. So she's very much in jail. She's not getting out. There's no bail. So she's effectively got to sort of live her rest of the time in jail until the trial happens.
That's it. And once she is in jail, she is told that she's allowed to make 1 phone call. She picks her mother. And by this point, the case has obviously made national news, and Casey is aware of that. And it's at this point where you would think that Casey would be looking for updates, developments on the case to know if there was any leads, anything they're investigating, if Zanny the Nanny has been looked into anymore. But actually, Casey's just not very happy with her mother in general.
Casey?
Mom.
Hey, sweetie.
Well, I just saw your nice little cameo on TV. You don't know what my involvement is and stuff?
I don't know what your involvement is, sweetheart. You're not telling me where she's at.
Because I don't know where she's at. Are you kidding me?
Casey, don't waste your call to scream and holler at me.
Waste my call sitting in, the jail?
But whose fault is you sitting in the jail? You're blaming me that you're sitting in the jail?
Not
Blame
my
yourself
fault.
for telling lies. You mean it's not your fault? What do you mean it's not your fault, sweetheart? If you'd have told them the truth and not lied about everything, they wouldn't...
Do me a favor, just tell me what Tony's number is. I don't want to talk to you right now. Forget it.
Now tell me if I'm wrong, Josh, but going on that call, it didn't seem like a concerned mum who's heartbroken over the disappearance of her daughter to me, really. Did you?
You don't have to be a body language expert to try and figure out this interview, do you? Like, have you seen this thing about her crying? She only cries when it's in relation to her and not to Caylee. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
There's something about that in this entire conversation. And this conversation isn't a quick conversation. This is a decent amount of footage that you can go through. Every time she's emotional, it's always about the state of herself.
Can I make an observation?
Yeah, go on.
Speaking about her being emotional there, with the context that we know, missing child, the context that we know about missing children, and, you know, the sort of time frame that you've got of likeliness of them being found alive, with all of that, this conversation, especially from Casey's side, is a little bit too light-hearted for me.
there's some stuff in there where she's laughing about prison food.
Yeah.
Like she's only able to eat certain elements of prison food. She's worried about her hair. She's worried about the way she looks.
She's
There's
doing a lot of
stuff that's
deflecting,
weird. Yeah.
in my opinion. There's a lot of times in that call, and obviously, look, the viewers can sit and watch the call in its entirety. We'll link the video in the description, but there's a lot of points in that call when it feels to me like the parents of Caylee Anthony are trying to softly direct her in to a place where they and the police force are going to be able to receive more information. I personally feel like they were on that call with somewhat, whether they, you know, consciously or subconsciously knew this, somewhat of a feeling that my daughter does know more than she's letting on.
Let's be honest, right? They know that the babysitter is bullshit because, first of all, like let's be fair, Caylee was probably like she could have been looked after by them. Like you know, they loved her.
By the way, they'd never heard of a babysitter.
Yeah, they'd never heard of this.
And we've got to remember, they spent about 90% of the time
looking
with
after
Caylee.
Yeah.
So the alarm bell should be ringing massively as soon as a babysitter is even mentioned.
Yeah. So they know that it's bullshit. And like you say, I do think they were subtly trying to get some information out about her. Like, you know where she is or where she was last seen. You know some more information, right? And like you say, every time she deflects away from that, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She's never given them any intel or anything, any information.
So we both feel like the parents suspect that Caylee knows more than she has told them, right? But that's just a feeling we have. Can we just confirm something right now? Can we just confirm from this call, it's our interpretation, that these grandparents have absolutely no idea where their granddaughter is or what has happened to their granddaughter?
No. And look, they say the dad actually says he's been looking day and night trying to find her. Like, he looks knackered. In fact, let's talk about this for a second. Caylee looks like she's fine. She looks like she's slept very well. She looks like bearing in mind she's in prison. Whereas the two parents look like they're knackered, like they're depressed, they're emotionally exhausted. They look like shells of themselves, don't they?
It was really taking its toll on the parents. And so much so that it took its toll to the point where the case was massively affected. And we're going to get into that. But be prepared that when you hear the details as to why the grief that the parents were going through affected the case, you're really going to hear some sinister, twisted shit here. But let's go back to that call.
Yeah, and the last thing we've got to talk about is throughout the entirety of that call, she was more interested in getting in touch with Tony, who was her boyfriend at the time, wasn't he? Rather than any other piece of information. She didn't want to talk to any of her family. She wasn't really interested in anything else. She just wanted to get in contact with Tony. I don't think she was actually ever connected directly to him by this point, was she? But there was a conversation with Christina, her friend, as well. Did you hear that bit? No. Basically, Christina was saying, like, where is she? Christina was distraught. And I think the family used Christina, because that was her best friend, by the way. I think that was the point in which they were sort of going, Christina's going to have that conversation. She's going to get information out of her. But Caylee wasn't giving anything away at this point.
Hello.
Hi. Do me a favor. Get my brother back because I need Tony's number.
Does Tony have anything to do with Caylee?
No. Nothing.
Okay, so why do you want to talk to Tony? You probably don't want to tell me.
He's my boyfriend, and I want to actually try to sit and talk to him because I didn't get a chance to talk to him earlier because I got arrested on a whim today.
And you know what it is, right? There were certain moments in the call where the family are telling her about the efforts that are being made to find her daughter. And Casey's just going, okay. Like, mate, the girl doesn't give a fuck.
She doesn't.
They're telling her about the efforts that the community are getting together and searching for her daughter, and she's not reacting. There's a moment when George Anthony shows her the back of his t-shirt that has Caylee's face on it, and he's showing her, look, we've made t-shirts. People are wearing these out and about in the community, and her body language is awful. She doesn't even react. You would think that out of desperation, right? We've dealt with a lot of true crime cases. We have actually interacted with a lot of the people that are involved in the cases. And on a handful of occasions, we've been thanked for raising awareness to these cases. This girl does not give a fuck that awareness is being raised to the missing persons case involving her child, does she?
No, she doesn't. And look, the T-shirt sort of indicates that more than anything, doesn't it? George is wearing a T-shirt that he's quite proud of being able to produce because it shows sort of like a helpline for someone to call up and actually report anything about Caylee's disappearance and where she is. And Casey like sort of just goes, yeah, like cool. Like she doesn't really care.
There's a point when Cindy says about the efforts to find her, and then she says, "Are we going to find her?"
Yeah.
Now that there is basically you in a roundabout way saying, is she alive or not?
Yeah.
That's what I took from
I think that's fair.
And it proves a real amount of doubt within the parent's mind. But that's what makes me feel so bad, that because there is still that minute sort of speck of a chance that Casey hasn't done something bad, her parents are still trying to be as supportive as they can.
Well, this is the thing. We've seen this in so many true crime cases. The parents always, throughout everything, even when their children have done awful things, they always try and see the best side of their kid. And I think even through everything that they dealt with Casey, the perpetual lying, the misbehaviour, the failing out of school, the mistakes that she'd made in her life, I still think they wanted to see her as a good kid and potentially that they'd done a good job. And in fact, this is the most heartbreaking point of this call, and I think we've got to move on after this, mate. But after this call, the father, George, he just says, I hope I've been a good parent. I hope I've been a good, grandparent. I wish I'd done better with what I've done. And I just found that absolutely awful because he tried his best, don't you?
And from an outsider's view looking in, and from someone who, like literally like that situation is in terms of that living dynamic, yeah, I'm literally like in that, like, you know what I mean, like I've got first-hand experience of that. He would have been fucking heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken. He had that young girl living with him at the time of her disappearance. Like, it's horrible to think what the parents went through. And the following day, it would have got even worse for them because it's at this point that police send sniffer dogs into George Anthony's car. The car that Casey had taken almost a month ago when she had left the family home. And the police dogs actually smell the scent of Caylee. Now, I obviously said that Caylee's car seat is still in there, so nothing too concerning about her scent being in there. But what was concerning was the fact that decomposition dogs, cadaver dogs, as some people may know them, also alerted to the scent of a decomposing body inside of the car. And basically, that means that Casey now has a lot of explaining to do. And as a result of that, Casey lawyers up. Now, usually at this point in one of our podcasts, I wouldn't really give my opinion on someone. But honestly, Jose Baez, the man that was Caylee Anthony's lawyer, is a real piece of work. So Josh, why don't you tell me a little bit about this shady character?
Unfortunately, everyone deserves a defence, but this guy really, really worked his defensive credentials in a way in which you're going to discover is pretty disgusting. So Jose Baez became a lawyer after this for people like Aaron Hernandez, Harvey Weinstein, and a few others as well. But at this point, he was a fairly unknown lawyer, I have to say.
He was unknown, but he did have an idol. He had a hero. He would actually describe him as someone he looked up to very, very much so. And you know who that is, don't you?
Yeah, so Johnny Cochran was the guy that he looked up to. That was actually one of the defense lawyers for O.J. Simpson in a case which I would love to cover on this channel because I've watched so many documentaries on the O.J. Simpson case.
So he looked up to a defense lawyer who got someone off of a crime that 99.9% of people believe they convicted.
I mean, we all knew what happened, allegedly.
Spoiler alert.
We all knew what happened with that case. Fuck me, what a mad case that is. But yeah, he saw them as his hero. So as you can imagine, as a result of that, I would say he described himself as a very talented storyteller with an ability to have an approach which was basically, I suppose, looking at scientific evidence and very much questioning it and also questioning people's character. So he'd often use sort of like an emotional response rather than disputing it in a scientific or legal sense.
Now, the questioning of people's character is something that we're going to get into, but this is one of the reasons why, I'll just put it out there, I think this man's a piece of fucking shit, to be honest, because the lengths that this lawyer will go to, and look, there's part of me that goes, well, fucking hell, mate, that makes for a good lawyer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the lengths that this man would go to and what his clients would agree to is sickening, in my opinion.
Yeah, and look, he, as you say, mate, he was a good lawyer for her because he immediately gets the no bail condition, the ability for her to not leave prison overturned.
Yeah,
so
he gets it overturned, right? But it's worth noting that that doesn't mean there's not a bail tariff still. That still means there's a bail. There's bond that needs to be posted
100%.
in order for her to leave the jail. And usually it can, depending on the crime, really, it can be anything from a couple of $100s to a couple of $1,000 to the tens
Could be
and
even
whatnot.
more. It can be millions.
If you were to get something in the 5-figure range, right, in terms of a bail, that's considered quite a high bail, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
What was her bail set at?
So this was set at $500,000.
$500,000.
A considerable amount of money. So much so that basically the judge said it because he thought that she'd never get out.
Yeah, I was going to say, so much so that although you've managed to get the sort of no bail condition overturned, realistically you haven't, because Caylee Anthony hasn't got $500,000, has she?
No, she doesn't. Well, she has some friends potentially that might. Did you know that the person that called in, we know them potentially as like a millionaire. I've heard other people in other podcasts talk about, this random millionaire. This was a guy, he was a bounty hunter. Have you heard about this?
No.
So basically the guy, he was from California. His name was Leonard Padilla. And basically he put forward the $500,000 because he thought, obviously you only get one side of the case sometimes in the media. So he'd seen some media and he thought that this doting mother was improperly imprisoned and that by allowing the bail to go through, she would leave the prison, leave the jail and frantically search for her daughter. But he does pay the money. She gets out.
So just quickly, a stranger pays the bail. This stranger has no connection to Caylee Anthony.
No.
Do you know?
Just been looking at the story.
You just
been like paying attention to the media.
Do you know, or have you looked into whether this person had any connection to Jose Baez?
I haven't.
I haven't either.
I don't think he did.
Be interesting to know, though.
It would be very interesting to know. And you can imagine Jose would have connections that would be able to do this.
I'm just saying it's weird that a random millionaire has paid off this bird's bail.
But saying that, apparently Leonard was very, very angry with the way that she behaved when she did get out of prison. So much so that he actually started a little bit of a campaign to get her to go back into prison. Did you know this?
He revokes the bail money, doesn't he? I didn't realise you could do this.
Yeah, exactly. So this leads us to October the 14th, 2008, when she is then officially arrested again. This time it's for first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and 4 counts of providing false information to the police. Quite a significant rap sheet at this point.
Massively significant. And not only that,
it gets
the
worse. The
prosecution announced that they will be seeking the death penalty in the case of a guilty verdict, don't they?
And this is the thing. What you got to remember with these first-degree murder cases is there is a huge burden of doubt. There's a burden of evidence. So the prosecution in this case need to provide a clear understanding with evidence to be able to provide the jury enough information so that they can convict someone without reasonable doubt, without any doubt at all, right? So this is then where they've got to start building the case. But before they do that, something horrific actually happens. And I'm going to warn you before we go into this is a really dark part of the story. There's definitely a trigger warning here. It involves the discovery of a young girl.
So during the time that Caylee has been incarcerated, there is a man named Roy Kronk, and he is a meter reader. And one of the places that he works is near a wooded area. And because he's been working outdoors, he's actually just been taking breaks during his shift to go to the toilet, and he will go into this wooded area, he will have a leak, and then he'll basically go back to work. And he actually notices that in this spot, that he has been going to basically go to the toilet while he's at work, there's actually a bag. And despite the bag looking fairly fresh, it ends up being there for quite a long time. So much so that he actually contacts the police about this bag. They go to the area to search it.
By the way, he contacted them 3 times, the police, and they didn't go and search it until the 3rd time. So much so, he actually got his boss to call the local sheriff's office. He was dialing 911. He had to call the local sheriff's office, find their exact number to force them to go down and check this bag out, by the way. So it wasn't like an immediate thing.
They eventually go to check the bag out. They can't find the bag.
No.
They can't find the bag.
They couldn't find it.
When they go there.
Well, look, it's like a swampland, and it's basically in the middle of nowhere, so it feels quite difficult.
Although he is able to tell them where the bag is.
Exactly where
and
it is.
he's saying, well, it's always there when I go for a wee. They go there, they can't find it, they go, he goes back there for another wee. What's there?
Still the bag.
The bag's
Hasn't
still
moved.
there. The police have missed it. So, what does he end up doing? He takes matters into his own hands. And finally, after wondering about this mystery bag for so long, he ends up looking inside and is immediately met with disgust and with shock, to be honest.
Fear as well, potentially.
Because what he finds inside of that bag are bones. So Roy Kronk then calls the police, and the police find out that these bones are the remains of a child, and are very likely that of one that has been involved in a homicide. One of the main reasons that they were able to assert this straight away was the fact that there was actually duct tape over the child's mouth. The area where the body was found was a 1/4 mile from where Caylee Anthony had been living prior to her daughter's disappearance. The body was later confirmed to be that of Caylee Anthony, and the frustration of the family must have been so high at this moment in time because, as I say, the body was found so close to their home. And not only that, the body was actually wrapped in one of Caylee's blankets, and therefore, had the sniffer dogs been used, then they more than likely would have been able to track the scent. And like always with cases where there is a body in a state of decomposition, it's obviously harder to be able to assert the cause of death straight away. It's harder to be able to carry out an autopsy on a body that is decomposing, has already had an autopsy carried out on that, and that means that the family and the friends and the public were left to wait for some time. And just a month, Josh, after that body was found, George Anthony, Casey's dad, Caylee's granddad, the man who we already spoke about being visible, you know, in his upset, in his heartbreak, in his anguish, a man that was pounding the pavements. He was out there looking for his granddaughter, handing out flyers, making t-shirts, and desperately trying to do what he could to help her be located. He actually attempts to take his own life, and he writes a 5-page letter to those that he feels he's leaving behind. And he's apologetic for his actions. In that letter, he expresses a massive amount of remorse in that letter. And he states that he is taking his life due to the heartbreak, the guilt, and the inability to be able to go on living without his granddaughter. It's honestly hard to even get my head around this part of the case. It's just heartbreaking, isn't it?
It's gutting. This poor man was through the ringer in a way in which I don't think we can ever fully comprehend. What the context of this as well is that he was being pestered by people that were coming to the family home that had seen the media coverage and felt that he might have been involved in some way. People wanted to go around and beat him up. I think he was physically assaulted a couple of times as well. So there's a lot of context to this, let alone just the anguish of dealing with it, let alone of the implication potentially in his mind that his daughter could have been a part of this missing girl's sort of last few moments as well. So
and that's
there
what you
was
got
so
to
many
remember,
parts of it.
like as a parent, and this actually it triggered me into thinking quite recently, because you spoke to me about not knowing what you would do if you were a parent and your child did something horrific, right? And it really got me thinking.
We talked about it in the last case we did.
We did. We spoke about this, and it really got me thinking about, God, like, what would I do, sort of thing. You've got to remember, this man, George Anthony, not only has he found out now that his granddaughter, you know, the apple of his eye, his little baby girl in his eyes, has been found dead. His original baby girl is also now sat in a prison. This man, in effect, has lost 2 children, you know, a child and a grandchild. And yeah, it's just dark times for the family as a whole, but clearly it had taken its toll massively on George.
He actually sent some text messages as well to his family. I think he sent a text message to his lawyer as well. And this is where, I mean, I have no idea how this was even possible, because basically he'd taken substances, he'd drunk a lot of alcohol, and that's how he wanted to end his life. They actually called the police, and he was in a hotel room. They actually got to him. Did you know this? They actually resuscitated him. They managed to bring him back around, and he actually survived that attempt on his own life.
Yeah.
And that's even, it's just devastating as well. Like the fact that he had to be found, the fact that he had to know that letter was out there as well. It's awful. And it gets even worse because very soon after this, our condolences go to him. This must be like a horrendous moment of his life. It must feel like a nightmare, to be honest, because this is then where we go in February 2009, where George and Cindy actually lay their granddaughter to rest. This was inside the Orlando Baptist Church, and over 1,200 mourners turn up to show their respects. This is, I suppose, a lighter element of the story where, you know, you finally get some community and people bounding together and actually looking after each other in this awful moment. And you do see, that community spirit of the local area.
It's 1,200 people that put in more effort, to be honest, Josh, than this young girl's mother did.
Yeah, and her mum actually did give a statement at the funeral. It breaks my heart today that Casey isn't here to honour our daughter, who she loves so much. Casey, I hope that you're listening to this. I wish I could comfort you, take away your pain, and wipe away your tears.
Imagine being sat at that funeral. Like, how would you react to that? Because there's obviously the whole thing of innocent until proven guilty, but what people don't like to admit is there is a grey area in the middle. Sometimes you can have a huge amount of circumstantial evidence against you and, you know, the way you've behaved and things like that. And therefore, although it's innocent until proven guilty, you're kind of presumed guilty until proven innocent in a lot of situations and scenarios. If I'm sat in the church at that moment in time, knowing that the mother that they're talking about, the person in question, is sat in jail right now and for good reason, I don't know, I find it weird, but then I suppose each to their own.
This is the thing, like you almost have to say something at the funeral, don't you? Because you have to talk about her mother. Her mother is still alive and, you know, has lost her daughter, you know, regardless of the circumstances. But yeah, I found this incredibly gutting, and I think everyone that was there would know that Casey was implicated in it, and that's what makes it even more tragic than you would expect. And while the 1,200 attendees of that funeral were mourning, the police were very much starting their inquiries and gaining a lot of evidence on the case.
Yeah, so one of the main things that had happened during this time is after the police already finding the scent of human decomposition inside that car, they needed to then link it to Casey and to Caylee, because ultimately a lot of cars aren't bought brand new. Sometimes they have previous owners, and there can be various reasons why you could smell the scent of decomposition. But one thing that was found in the boot of the car was a hair of Caylee's. And this hair, again, isn't weird, you know. This is her car that she travels in. Her car seat's in there. But they were actually able to do some advanced sort of forensic DNA testing on this hair. And they were able to identify that this hair had come from the head of a deceased human being. Meaning that when the hair fell out into the boot of the car, it had come from Caylee's body that at that point was no longer alive. And therefore, they were able to prove that Caylee Anthony was dead inside the boot of the car being driven by Casey Anthony. And detectives summarised that the likelihood is that Caylee died on June the 16th of 2008. They also found that there were unexplained levels of chloroform in the boot of the car. Now, it is worth noting that chloroform can be found in cleaning products, but the exact wording that the detective used was shockingly high levels of chloroform. And one thing that this substance can be used for is to incapacitate people. Casey's laptop and other electronic devices have also been seized, and police start to uncover some disturbing searches. They see that on the morning of June 16th, the date that they have determined to be that of Caylee's death, Casey was Googling suffocation and foolproof suffocation, and most disturbingly, she had searched neck breaking on Google. Later CCTV from that day show Casey and her boyfriend inside of a Blockbuster store, but Caylee is nowhere to be seen. And you remember us mentioning chloroform, and there was good reason for that, because despite it being found in cleaning products, we said that there were highly elevated levels of chloroform found within that vehicle. And the search history on Casey's laptop showed that she had been searching about chloroform. She'd been searching of what it can be used for and how you could go about making it. So when the police find elevated levels of this in her car, I'm going to want to know why you were searching that. But before that, the evidence just keeps on building, because the police start to work their way through Casey Anthony's diary, and she's writing into that journal during the time that Caylee is apparently missing. And this is an entry from a week after Caylee went missing, and it reads, "I have no regrets, just a bit worried. I just want for everything to work out okay. I completely trust my own judgment and know that I have made the right decision. This is the happiest I've been in a very long time, and I hope that my happiness will continue to grow. I've made new friends that I really like. I've surrounded myself with good people, and I'm finally happy." Basically, the diary never actually gives you an admission of guilt, but what it does do is gives you a real insight into the mind of Casey Anthony and into the emotional state of Casey Anthony during the time that her daughter is apparently missing and she has no idea where she is. And basically, what the diary reveals is during that time, all she was fucking doing was partying. Even the boyfriend that we spoke about. Josh, do you know what that boyfriend's job was?
He was a club promoter.
A club promoter. She was going out with a club promoter. Now, it really doesn't take a genius at this point in time, because most people will be putting the case together and they'll be understanding that this is a girl who had a baby at a very young age, especially in the United States, where you're not able to drink and you're not able to do a host of things until the age of 21. This girl was pregnant as a teenager, and therefore those coming of age years, those formative years where you do party, you do go out, you make mistakes and regrets, but you learn from them. She'd missed out on a lot of those years, and a picture was starting to be painted in my eyes of a woman who wanted to claw back her youth and was willing to go to any lengths that it took to do so.
Yeah, absolutely that. And let's be honest, the court of public opinion was very much against Caylee at this point. The context that we've got to provide at this point here is that this was national, probably international news at the time. She'd already featured on front covers of People magazine, for example, which is a huge publication all around the world and especially in the United States. News coverage, 24-hour news, you know, newspapers, TV, radio, everyone was talking about this case, which made getting to trial very, very difficult because they had to find 12 people to form a jury that didn't know anything about the case so that they could be impartial. And they also needed to find people that were willing to sort of be involved in this jury, bearing in mind how much sort of anger and fear and attention that there was around the case. As we've said, there's already people knocking on the Anthony's household, actually resorting to physical violence. So you can imagine there are a lot of people that actually didn't want to be in this jury. Jerry, I don't know if you know this, there was actually a juror that paid a $4,000 fine, like a contempt of court fine, so that he didn't go as one of the jurors for the case.
I didn't know that, no. But what I do know is that the 12 that were selected had to be quarantined in the build-up. And that was in an attempt to not be swayed by public opinion. And it really does show just what a grasp on the nation this case had, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So I'm now going to sort of go through the series of events that the prosecution put forward to the court and to the jury. Now, before we get into this, trigger warning here, incredibly graphic and incredibly detailed, and it's awful. So just bear that in mind before we get into it. So on May the 24th, 2009, the prosecution starts and they speak about the case and they try to explain what happened. They said that Caylee used chloroform to incapacitate her own daughter before then suffocating her with duct tape. They then believe that Caylee put Kaylee's body into a hockey bag and then put it and left it in the boot of her car. They then believed that Caylee ditched the bag at a later date because of the smell that was coming from this bag and in the boot of the car. In terms of motive, they basically said that Caylee just didn't want to be a mum at this point. Like we were saying a minute ago, she wanted to enjoy her youth and live every moment of it, but she didn't want to deal with her daughter. She didn't go through the traditional routes of adoption, for example. She just went through this horrendous act. And they obviously used her search history against her. And they also proved that the duct tape was from that family home. So they knew that Caylee had discovered it from home. Not only that, but they also found that the blanket that Caylee was unfortunately wrapped in, again, was from the family home as well. And they'd use a lot of evidence and a lot of character testimony to say that Caylee was a compulsive liar, and very much sort of through various situations, she'd been proved to be a liar, and that therefore she was a far than credible candidate in this trial. She was a far than credible witness, we should say. But throughout all of this case, what you're then waiting for is a defense rebuttal. This is the way that court cases go. You've got the prosecution, they set forward a case, and the defense then got to pick it apart and try and find elements of the evidence that are not reputable and not fair. So what the prosecution do is they try and put forward all of this evidence, but they couldn't find a direct link between Caylee and the murder itself. And this is where Jose Baez actually goes in and very much tears it apart in his own special way. So this lawyer then says that Caylee wasn't murdered. In fact, she had died because of a result of neglect. The family home had an open swimming pool, and he claimed that George Anthony, Caylee's grandfather, Casey's father, was not looking after Caylee, and he allowed her to fall into the pool in which she drowned.
This is the same George Anthony, by the way, who tried to take his own life through grief, through guilt, and through heartbreak at the fact that he was going to never see his granddaughter again. That George Anthony, that's who we're talking about. That's the one who was apparently neglectful.
Yeah, and it gets worse from there, mate. Like, this is it's one thing to accuse a man with no evidence and no reason to actually accuse him. And bear in mind, let's make this really, really clear. He put this assertion, Jose put this assertion out there without any substantive evidence to back it up. But he still said it in court, which I find absolutely ridiculous that he was even admitted into court at this point.
I also, just to add on to it, would say it was very, very opportunistic, because I think that attempt to take his own life
It's disgusting.
is something that Jose Baez would have seen and immediately thought was an in for him to be able to benefit in terms of the case from.
To use that in this court case, the attempt to take his own life,
And imply
is
it was
quite frankly disgusting.
and imply that it was it was almost like an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
When there was a 5-page letter, and that 5-page letter never had any admission of guilt. In fact, that 5-page letter had words, and I'm paraphrasing here, but along the lines of encouraging his daughter to tell the truth, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It did. It's going through what he went through was traumatic enough. Going through the court case, going through the trial, going through the search, going through the attempt itself, surviving the attempt. This guy, honestly, I don't know how he did it.
But you've just mentioned all of these horrific things.
Yeah.
Josh, this is the low point.
Yeah.
Being accused of what he was accused of.
100%.
After all of that, this is the low point. That shows you just how low it is that not only Jose Baez even had the idea to do it, Caylee Anthony was willing to pin this on the people that had been the last ones to defend and fight her corner.
Literally that. So it gets worse, to be honest with you. So at this point, you've got, unfortunately, Caylee's dead body, and he needs to basically look after it and needs to put it away somewhere. And so Jose actually says during the trial that George Anthony actually tries to hide the body at this point, and it was all his idea, and that Caylee was just coerced into assisting and being part of this plan and this ruse. And it gets far darker, because Jose stands up in the courtroom and then says that George had not only abused Caylee, but he had also abused little Caylee. Even though there was no evidence, and no evidence ever presented to the trial, to the jury in any single way, he had the audacity to actually claim this. And it was clear what was going on. He was trying to defame his character. He was trying to make out that this guy was sinister and evil and a key component of the crime. But the fact was, he never was. And as much as you think that Jose couldn't get any worse than he already has been, he actually then goes and accuses Lee, Casey's brother, of also abusing her and the young child. And finally, he goes for Casey's mother, Cindy, and he basically says that Cindy forced Casey to keep young Caylee and basically not allow her to go through the abortion or even the adoption procedure. Now, there's a lot of problems with Jose's should we just call it a story? Is that fair to say? I would use words even less than
load
that,
of
to be honest with
bollocks.
you. Yeah, a load of bollocks. Yeah.
But
There's quite
story.
a few problems to it, isn't there? Because it didn't quite add up. Like, people weren't backing up his story. Like, a lot of friends were talking and they were interviewed and provided witnesses on the stand, and they weren't agreeing with what he was saying.
Well, Caylee was a sociable person even before she went on this, party period in which her daughter went missing, and therefore she did have a lot of friends, and those friends were interviewed, they were spoken with, and they presented something quite different in terms of what Jose Baez were saying, because what the friends were seeing and what they perceived to be going on inside the Anthony household was harmony, quite a happy home life. The friends didn't say that Caylee was unhappy being a mother. They said that she was actually reveling in being a mother. Also, another thing, right? If Caylee's this great mother and actually the real bad people are the grandparents, then why was Caylee constantly leaving Caylee with these people that she knew could do such bad things? Why would Caylee have lied for her father in the first place? Why would Caylee have been making all of these Google searches the night before that just so happened to coincidentally implicate her in this case? There's a lot of questions, aren't there?
There's a lot of questions. Wasn't there also, in terms of just going back to those Google searches, wasn't Jose's assertion that it was Cindy that was actually doing some of these Google searches rather than Caylee? Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
Like, basically, he was saying that she was looking up chloroform, and actually, this is a really weird part of the case. Doesn't Cindy actually agree that she was looking up chloroform?
I don't know whether I'd say she agrees to it or not. I think that she
said that she did.
Concedes that she could have accidentally looked for it while looking for something else.
Yeah. She was looking for chlorophyll, I think,
I think
in relation to like a dog search. Yeah. It was something in relation to the dog, basically. But she actually, but let me just say this. She actually went to court and said, it could be me that did it. There's a really good chance for it. And police actually said and proved that she was at work when she did that searches. This was on the family's home computer. So there's no way that she could have done it. And Jose's still trying to use that against her.
And I'll also bring you back to those recorded prison phone calls where obviously you can see both Caylee Anthony and her parents. And during that call, there are times when George Anthony is trying to press Caylee on the situation, and that is really not something that I believe a man with something to hide would be doing.
So what Jose had done at this point, and what is clear, is that he had planted the seeds of doubt in the jury's mind, and again they've got to prove beyond reasonable doubt that she was guilty. And what was clear at this point is that the defense were doing a far better job than the prosecution, and so we have to say at this point we get to June the 5th 2011, where Caylee was found not guilty by a unanimous decision amongst the jury. She was found not guilty of murder, not guilty of aggravated child abuse, and aggravated murder. She was found guilty of some crimes. They were the 4 false information charges that she was given to police, in which each count was given a sentence of 1 year in prison. Now, context here, she had already served around 2 to 3 years at this point in jail before getting to the trial, which meant she was only given 10 days in prison after that trial to serve her full amount of jail time.
So after all of the evidence stacks up against her, after her friends, who you would assume would have her back, come out and give conflicting statements as to the home life and the situation that Caylee Anthony was in during that period of time, after an incriminating search history is uncovered, and after showing fuck all remorse around her child's death, Caylee Anthony walks free. And after Caylee's release from prison, obviously all contact with her family, all ties were immediately cut off. And if I'm honest, if I was in Caylee's family, I'm not going to want to fucking talk to this girl either. I don't personally believe that her father abused her. I don't personally believe that her brother abused her. And I don't personally believe a word that comes out of Caylee Anthony's mouth, to be completely honest with you. And when she got out of jail, she actually moves in with a man named Patrick McKenna, who was her lead defense lawyer.
That is fucking weird.
I'll tell you what's weirder. He gave her a job as a legal advocate and researcher for his company, and she still works doing that until this day.
This is so weird. Did you also hear the rumour that she might have been sleeping with Jose as well during the trial?
I mean, it's Caylee Anthony, mate. Wouldn't surprise me.
But also, what people were saying was that this guy was actually quite a high-flying lawyer in terms of his fees. And they don't quite understand how Caylee was affording all of this trial. Bear in mind, the parents weren't obviously helping at all at this point. So there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't add up. It feels a bit weird.
A little bit like that bond being paid, in my opinion. In 2022, she appeared in a feature-length documentary about her case, which came under a lot of criticism. Understandably, the violins were out. She was playing the victim. And I think the front of Caylee Anthony, and to our American viewers, It's a bit more of a British terminology, the front there. What,
Yeah.
what am I trying to allude to?
Like just the ability to bullshit your way through this documentary and basically fabricate your story and provide something that it quite obviously isn't true.
And I think also just having the confidence to show your face in public. You know, Caylee Anthony didn't leave the local area immediately after this. There was footage that actually came out of her in a bar where she had called police over the fact that someone had spotted her and thrown a drink over her. And look, this has got to be something with the high profile nature of this case that must have happened to her so many times over the years that I just cannot believe the front of this woman to still want to go about her life in the public eye, which is exactly what she's doing, by the way. She's recently launched a TikTok account as well, where, you know, she's claiming that she'll be posting, giving out legal advice, stuff like that. I mean, unless someone wants advice on how to kill their kid, no one's going to want to come to you, love.
The fact that she's profiting from all of these different media activities. By the way, she made 750 grand from the documentary, and also apparently was written into the terms and the contract terms of that documentary that she would have creative control over it as well. So always be worried about someone making a documentary of themselves with their own creative control, because it's probably not going to be fair and accurate. Good news is they only got 1.9 stars on Google and 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb. So the fans pretty much didn't enjoy that show, and people watching it didn't enjoy it either. What about Zanny the Nanny? What happened to her?
So Zanny the Nanny actually took out a lawsuit against Caylee Anthony and her legal teams. Obviously, she was a real person. She had been involved in childcare, and it was obviously defamation for her. As we know, though, Caylee Anthony has a very good legal team, and it was thrown out of court. Zanny the Nanny did not receive a penny in compensation, did she?
It's horrible. It's harsh. This is the thing, like, her career would definitely have been affected by it. The problem was is she couldn't prove how much it would have been affected by. So I feel really sorry for her. Someone that was completely drawn into something that she had no desire to be involved in any way, because someone had looked her up on the internet, basically.
And just quickly, I mentioned the TikTok account of Caylee Anthony, where she speaks about her intentions for the page, and she says that she's reintroducing herself in that video, right? Because, you know, her and the public, they got off on the wrong foot after she killed her kid. But yeah, she's asking for money for potential subscribers to paid platforms, I should say. And she's spoken about the fact that people close to her have been targeted and attacked. And she now claims that she's an advocate for women, for the LGBTQ community, for women's rights, and most importantly, for her daughter, Caylee Anthony. And she's also an advocate for Caylee's Law. Do you know about Caylee's Law?
I do. So Caylee's Law came in, and I think really it's one of the only sort of good things in this entire case, to be honest with you. The central purpose of Caylee's Law is to criminalise the failure of a parent or legal guardian to basically disclose if a child is missing or deceased. This legislation actually says that it's a felony charge. So that's, you know, the most serious charge that you can do in the United States for failing to report a missing child. And lawmakers in Florida, Oklahoma, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, West Virginia, and Alabama have actually already implemented versions of this law. In Alabama, it's actually now up to 10 years in prison you can get for not reporting a youngster as being missing or deceased. So it's a considerable amount of jail time that you could get. So yeah, one, I suppose, small good thing a part of this case.
Yep, definitely a good thing to come out of this case, but definitely a case where there is just so much more bad. And just to clarify, right, this is a woman that lied to the police. This is a woman that failed to report her daughter missing, showed no signs of remorse, no signs of sympathy during the time that her daughter was missing, allegedly employed a dodgy lawyer who was known for getting people off of cases that they should have not got off of, and then, after winning her court case, continued to walk the same streets and enjoy the second chance that she was given, a second chance that her daughter will never have to live her life. And you know what else we will never have as the public? And that is the answer to what really happened to Caylee Anthony. That is an admission of guilt, a confession, and even justice, in my opinion. But what we do have is a woman who is now on social media asking for paid subscriptions, clamoring for attention, but has no answers as to what happened to her daughter, as to who killed her daughter, as to who put her daughter in the car she was using, and as to why you weren't aware of it. Because despite Caylee Anthony's claims that her dad was involved, if he was, then why did no court ever look into him? Because it seems to me like the important thing, which is who was responsible for Caylee Anthony's death, was never even looked into.
And as always in these cases, we want to end with our condolences for all of the friends and family that had to deal with this horrific incident. Our thoughts and prayers very much go out to them. Thank you so much to all of you that have watched these episodes. Joey and Josh is 1 year old as per this video.
I can't believe
so
that.
It's a huge
mad, isn't it?
birthday and a huge case to cover for the 1 year birthday. But I think we just want to say thank you to every single one of you that has subscribed, that like, that comment, that have become members on the Joey and Josh channel, because without you, we wouldn't be here having fun and talking about some of these cases that we always do. We always enjoy doing them, even when we're talking about the most horrific things. Joey and I love this case and love these sort of, you know, these incidents ourselves, don't we?
Cases, yeah, 100%. It's been something that we've really enjoyed. So thank you so much. You can become a subscriber with one click of a button. You can also become a member of the channel. That will give you the ability to be able to leave your own blueprint on this channel. So many of our recent cases have come from membership suggestions. So if you did want to become a member, there is a link in the description to this video. Thank you all so much. There is another video on screen now that you will be able to click on, and that video is the disappearance of Amy Bradley. If you like this case, I'm sure you'll like that one. We will see you all in the next one.